NJ Vance Media, and welcome back to the Rutgers Rant. As always, joined by Keith Sargent, James Cratch. We're 1-0, a 1-0 podcast. The first time we've had that since this time last year, guys. I'm thinking about the victory over UMass, and I've just been trying to decide if it raised my expectations for the season. And I think the answer to that, for me at least, is yes and no. No, I'm not ready to go over 3-9, which was my prediction. But yes, in that, those games last year, like Maryland and Illinois and Buffalo, where the team was just blown out of the water by mediocre opponents, I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think I saw enough, especially on offense, to make me think that this team will be competitive in games that are toss-ups. So if that's the case, then, you can look at 3-9. That's kind of where I'm still at. But it's possible that they'll grab a couple more. I mean, what did you guys think? Did what happened on Friday night change your opinion, Cratch?
No, not really, because one, after watching the game over the weekend, UMass is really not very good. Yeah. And two, I mean, I understand fans are very excited about McLane Carter, and he did a lot of things to be excited about, and I understand why there's a buzz. And, as McNulty said today, they did things on offense that they just didn't do last year in this first game with him. That being said, he still threw 3 interceptions, and everyone has run around coming away with excuses for those 3 picks. If Art had thrown them, people would have been flipping out.
Right.
So, I just think at this point, they still turned the ball over 3 times. They looked a lot better doing it, but the stat line was, with the exception of the yards, was basically the same as it was last year in the opener when they beat Texas State. I think they were more impressive at winning this game than they were winning the Texas State game, but I just looked at the game, and I just think there's so many things that we really haven't seen yet that we're going to see in Iowa, and that's where the true test is.
How about you, Sorry? Did it change anything for you?
Well, I mean, if it was, I'd have them in a bowl game, because if you remember, I went 5-7 last week. Do I think they're a bowl team?
We do. We're not going to forget that. Don't worry.
Do I think they're a bowl team? I don't. I haven't seen enough yet. I will say this. It kind of, just looking at the Big Ten results and watching Minnesota really struggle to put away South Dakota State, just to emphasize my point again, October's, a bunch of winnable games, and again, we're going to have to look at, how they play against Iowa. We'll talk about that later, but I just think that, there's some winnable games on this schedule that looking at this first week, you're right. I think that they were able to, show that they were able to pull away against UMass. I think that they're going to be able to win some games in October.
Right. Well, we'll dive in, and we've talked a lot about what McLane Carter has been able to do, and I think just by strict standpoint of running the offense, he seemed to be in command of it. He seemed to go through his reads well. He threw a lot of great balls, and looking at some of we talked a great deal about Bo Melton finally having his big game. A couple of those passes, especially the touchdown pass to Bo Melton, I mean, he was well covered. It was a perfectly placed ball to get to him. Looking back at the film, what did McNulty say about Carter today? And are there any new insights that you can see about what he did well and where he's got to improve? Cratchy, go ahead.
I think he just basically, said what we've been kind of saying, that he feels that the football IQ's there, commands of the huddle. He sort of took credit for at least 2 of the picks. He said that, he thought that, he could have made better play calls on the first one and the last one. I guess the middle one, maybe Isaiah Washington, you're trying to let a freshman go make a play. He probably has to fight back to the ball a little bit more. I think everyone was very happy and kind of impressed with the way that Carter kind of stabilized the team after they were down 14-0 early and then 21-7. I also think it became kind of clear that Fan Appreciation Day practice was sort of the turning point in the whole quarterback battle. And, he was asked how close was the competition, and John really didn't answer it. So I tend to think that the quarterback competition between Sikowski and Carter maybe looked more competitive to us in the limited view we got than maybe it was internally.
Right. Yeah, I just want to make one point too. Cratch kind of alluded to it with the open practice, that first scrimmage where it was basically McLane Carter's coming out party. that play to Isaiah Washington, correct me if I'm wrong, James, it was basically the same play. It might have been the same exact play that McLane Carter hit on in that scrimmage where he had, I think it was a 50-yard touchdown pass to Isaiah Washington streaking down the right sideline. That was pretty much the play that really, I think, everyone opened up everyone's eyes, which is kind of interesting. The difference is, he got pressure. I think it came off the right side of the line, and he just didn't have as much time to hit that play. What I found interesting, is Chris Ash during his press conference said, he called it a great game plan, and I think he's right. The fact that 21 touches apiece for Isaiah Pacheco and Raheem Blackshear, obviously the two most talented offensive players on the team, that's a good number, 21 apiece. Bo Melton, getting him involved, getting him off the schneid, so to speak, getting McLane Carter comfortable, really good game plan. But Chris Ash said there's more, there's more in the game plan. There's more in the offensive scheme that they left out, which is always a good thing, especially when you score 48 points.
Mm-hmm. I will say this though, guys, and I don't think Art Sikowski had a game last year where he had the protection that McLane Carter had against UMass, and part of that's got to be the fact that UMass, as we've noted many times, isn't a good team and certainly wasn't good up front. But Kratch, you looked at it, the offensive line play. Was the line better than you expected, or is this just pushing around a smaller team and it's going to be exposed this week when Iowa was there?
Look, they were better than I expected from what I saw in the preseason. That being said, I didn't think UMass was terribly strong up front. I think Texas State had a lot better athletes and kind of in their front seven a year ago than UMass did. UMass did bring some stunts and some pressure, but, watching the game, a lot of times they would, Carter would complete a big pass, and then they would show the replay, and Sean O'Hara, who was doing the analysis for BTN, would be like, well, a 3-man rush is coming, or a 4-man rush is coming. There was a lot of times in those big plays, I can't name any specific off the top of my head, where they were rushing 3 or 4. They were keeping guys in coverage, so the offensive line was not really having to do much more than put a hat on a hat.
Right.
That's going to change with Iowa, especially when you got A.J. Epinesa, one of the best players in the country, who you're going to have to double or triple team every play.
Yeah. You can't do these 5, 6, 7 step drops. A lot of those plays were really slow developing. I was kind of surprised. I thought they'd be a much quicker passing offense, and so yeah, that's going to have to change, Sarge. I imagine that we're going to see really what McLane Carter has when he's facing a pass rush, when he's on the run, when it's not as easy as just standing back there, and that's going to be for me the true test of what he's all about.
I agree. The one play that really stuck, and I saw it in the film review that Kratch, the Pulitzer award winning film review.
It took us 8 minutes to get to the
But we joke. He does a masterful job. I'm being totally serious. With the way he will add a gift to it, and for perspective, the one play that really stood out to me, we kind of talked about it a little bit post game, was that play to Bo Melton on a 4th and 2 on that first drive, and the play that Carter made was, he was so poised in the pocket, he backed up a couple steps to buy himself some time because there was pressure coming off the right side. He backed up. It was so poised, made a great throw into traffic. That was the type of play that we haven't seen a Rutgers quarterback make maybe since Gary Nova's senior year.
He had a lot of time, too. A lot of time. I know some of it is his own doing.
If you look back at it, I think he made that time because there was some pressure coming off that right side.
Right. All right. Let's go to the defense. I didn't notice this in real time, but it did, again, in the film review, a great point that Kratch made. It looked like the linebackers were exposed in the passing game. That's been a problem in the past. I thought it was supposed to be, if not cured, certainly better talent at that position. Kratch, what did you see, and how concerned are you about that aspect of this team?
I think you have to be concerned just because the guys are who they are. I think we can sit here and we can debate the merits or the lack thereof of Ellen Loomer and Tyreek Maddox-Williams and C.J. Onyechi being out in coverage, but that's the scheme. It's not changing. Ash had hired a new defensive coordinator, could have changed it, didn't, hired a guy basically to run his defense. And I think that you saw UMass pick on them early on, short side of the field, kind of quick passes into the flat. And then the first touchdown, Maddox-Williams just kind of got lost in space, and the tight end went right down the seam, wide open for a touchdown. Safety help, can never get over there in time. So I think that that's something that Big Ten teams, I'm sure Iowa is going to look to exploit this week, especially a program like Iowa that, they've got some new tight ends. Obviously, they had 2 guys go to the NFL in the first round, but they live and die by their tight ends. They produce tight ends. Nate Stanley is a very accomplished quarterback. I would assume you're going to see teams try to exploit that and get those matchups. And look, Rutgers does it too. I mean, they want to get Blackshear on linebackers. That's a good matchup for them, but I just think that was something that stood out to me that, UMass, they were really limited. I mean, Rutgers had a decisive physical and athletic advantage over UMass.
Right.
But UMass was able to kind of cobble it all together for a quarter because Walt Bell was gutsy with his play calling. They went for it, and they kind of exploited those Rutgers weaknesses. Now you're going to see a team that's a massive step up in competition, and they're going to be able to take what UMass did and copycat it.
Right. And I will say this, and I know there's a lot of speculation about the defense and whether or not Chris Ash took over the play calling. He denied that to your direct question at the press conference. What I do find interesting, Sarge, and they were really, the defensive backs were laying 5-6 yards off early on, and then got back to what Chris Ash likes to do, which have the DBs pressing, have them closer to the receivers at the line. That was a noticeable change. That was really when the game shifted back to the defense started to dominate. What happened there, and what's going to happen when they have against a team with talented receivers and with a lot of receivers? Is it going to be a different philosophy, you think, than what we saw?
2 things about that. I think you're right. It was a great observation that they did really they gave him way too much space, and then you saw that Damon Hayes in particular was right up on their guy. He really shut down over the final 3 quarters. He was flawless. It was almost like the Darrell Revis type of thing where he's quiet and you don't hear from him, and that's a good thing because they're not going to throw it to that side. But it's kind of what we talked about. I think that Rutgers is really good with the top 2 corners, and Avery Young and Damon Hayes. And then beyond that, there's question marks. I know Trey Avery made a great play, a great interception on that play, but he's still kind of improving. And where that could come and bite him is, like Crash said, tight ends going up in space and slant routes and plays over the middle. Until those cornerbacks, those nickel and dime cornerbacks are able to prove themselves, it's going to be a weakness.
Right. We didn't see a lot of that, and we will see it soon. All right, let's dive into true and false. True or false? All right, last week you broke the cardinal rule. Let's answer true or false, and we'll get to the end, and we'll cover it all. Lots of topics here this week because we finally saw this team against another opponent, so we've got a lot of fun things to cover. Let's start here. True or false? Art Sikowski is going to redshirt.
False.
False.
True.
Sarge? All right. True or false? Art Sikowski is going to transfer. Kratch, what do you got?
False.
False. All right. Sarge? False. You're going to stick with it. True or false? This is still Chris Ash's defense no matter who is calling the plays. True or false?
True.
True.
True. Double true. All right. True or false? Rutgers is in big trouble against teams that use 4 to 5 receiver spread sets. True or false?
True.
True. True or false? Johnny Langan will be the first quarterback off the bench if Carter struggles.
False.
False.
False. True or false? The best player on defense against UMass was Tyshawn Fogg, the linebacker. True or false?
True.
True.
Double true. Okay. It was interesting. Who you would say would be the next guy. True or false? The interior defensive line is still a glaring liability, and Iowa will expose it. True or false?
Big true. Big true. True.
Big true. True or false? The Big Ten is better than the SEC.
False.
Big false.
Big false. And finally, true or false? The new victory statue is all kinds of awesome.
True.
All right. True. And let me just break the cardinal rule for 1 second. There's a photo on Twitter on Ron Garuti's Twitter feed of the statue with the fireworks in the background. It is beautiful. It's something that I kind of wanted to actually say for myself. It is. Fans have to check it out. It is really the answer is an overwhelming true that it is kind of awesome.
This is what Francis Scott Key saw when he wrote the Star Spangled Banner. That's what I was thinking. It's great. It really is a great photo, and it was great to see. We'll talk a lot about it. But there were a lot of off the field fun things going around the stadium. the unveiling of the statue was one of them. Ron Garutti, obviously, Rutgers fans, if you don't know who he is, you probably haven't been around a lot. Great guy. And he said a lot of positive, his words during his speech were, I think, really well received about where the state of the program is and what he hopes the statue will do, which will be inspire people. But it certainly is an impressive, and I was skeptical, as we discussed. I'm like, why are they spending money on the statue? But, it's going to be an asset. So I'm glad they did that. All right. So let's look at the other stuff we have for you guys. You both think that Art's going to stick it out, sorry, do you think he will?
I do. I think McLane Carter, I just was so impressed by his performance. I know the interceptions are something to monitor, but yeah, I think he was so poised. It was one of the best quarterback performances I've seen, certainly in the last 5 years.
Right. Now, Cratch, you had an interesting in the film review about the interior defensive line. You thought that, they might have played better than maybe expected in those. What did you see there, and what makes you still think it's a liability?
Yeah, I thought Dugan played pretty well at nose, but I think Dugan, it's UMass. I hate to use that asterisk with everything we talk about, but we have to see that more. I think Julius Turner is a guy who, from what I understand, he battled a back injury. He had back surgery, I believe, in the offseason. Didn't do much in the spring, was limited in the summer. I mean, that is something that the Rutgers has to be careful with and kind of manage and monitor all season long. And that's tough to do when you're already kind of an undersized nose tackle in the Big Ten. Obviously we know Ron Johnson never showed up. And, they don't have a lot of depth behind those guys. Willington Prevalon, I think, is a very serviceable player, but I don't think he's ever going to be a dominant player. And, I just thought, the defensive ends, the Jacks, did not play as well as I expected them to play on Friday night. And, I know UMass was trying to get rid of the ball quickly, but there were also some drops, and I didn't really see much of a pass rush. So I just think that defensive line, it's an issue, and I think that's why this is an acid test this weekend, because this has always been about the line of scrimmages for Rutgers. Iowa is very good on both, and I think it could be a massive wake-up call for Rutgers that they've got a long way to go still.
Right. We're going to see that this week. So interesting, you both kind of laughed at me saying the Big Ten is better than the SEC. Of course, it's not. But what did you think? I mean, looking at, I was thinking mostly of the great Tennessee loss to Georgia State. But what did you see? It's great to finally have a Saturday off. You can watch the other action. I mean, what teams impressed you? What teams didn't impress you? You mentioned Minnesota, Sarge, was not a good one. Was there anything else that jumped out of you?
Strictly from the Big Ten, Michigan State looked good against Tulsa, but I don't know if they're the four horsemen Notre Dame team that Cratch had him, in his AP top 25. I'm not sure if they're that level good yet, so might have to prove themselves. Yes. Wisconsin, Jonathan Taylor was a Big Ten Player of the Week, and he is spectacular.
Heisman, I think he's the Heisman favorite, right?
And it got lost in the shuffle at Big Ten Media Day, but I spent 20 minutes with him, and he's really just such an articulate, really just seems like a great kid. He really belongs in New York for Heisman weekend. Again, Rutgers fans will always think of him as the one who got away. He committed to Rutgers back in the recruiting process, but he's someone to root for. He's just really a spectacular player.
Yeah, Crash, did you change any of your top 25 because of this weekend? Anything?
We don't. We're voting obviously after the Notre Dame game. I will probably drop. I'm going to drop Michigan State. I didn't think the Big Ten really did much to impress. I mean, Michigan. I think one thing you have to remember is Middle Tennessee is not a bad football team. Michigan was kind of lackluster. Northwestern looked really bad, losing at Stanford. I mean, it's not a bad loss, but it's still Stanford. Nebraska did not impress against South Alabama. I mean, I think Wisconsin was probably the most impressive team of the weekend. I think they'll probably climb into my top 25 this week. Missouri will come out, and I think I'm still debating whether or not I take Army out. On one hand, only beating Rice 14-7 is tough, but the other hand, I do think they've got a chance to be competitive with Michigan this weekend in the Big House. No, I thought it was not a terribly impressive. Ohio State jumped all over FAU and then kind of let them score a lot of points down the stretch. Mm-hmm. Penn State and Maryland just shamelessly ran up the score on punching bag opponents.
What about the Maryland and Illinois, the two teams? I know they're playing punching bags, but two teams that you would put
Illinois. I would say Illinois was very impressive to me.
Yeah.
42-3 against an Akron team that it was kind of 6-6, just 6-6-ish last year. Yeah. That was pretty good. That's a team that usually Illinois has been taking into the third quarter recently.
Right. All right, good rundown, guys. Let's jump to the next segment, which we have not had in a while. Mean Tweets is back, and I mean it. Mean Tweets is back with authority. So last season, we stopped doing this because, I think with Rutgers fans, you just couldn't be mean enough. They were so angry about the team. So I'd write a column where I thought I was killing them, and they'd be like, good column, but you didn't go far enough, right? So we kind of just backed off the mean tweets. Rutgers fans got frisky during this game. You think 41.
Lots of chest thumping.
It was pretty cool. I was really happy to see it.
UMass, man.
Right. They got in my, so I tweeted in the first quarter, 21-7. I put out a tweet there that said something like, Rutgers fans are seeing a team that, overcoming its talent deficiencies with smart coaching, great play calling and aggressiveness, something like that. And they're also seeing Rutgers. And so by second quarter, fans were like, oh, this didn't hold up. So I had a good little interaction with one of my a guy on Twitter I've interacted with a bunch named Jersey J, and he saw my column, which of course I praised how well they played, and he goes, "What a change of course from your first quarter tweet last night." And I was like, "Well, Jay, I never understand why people don't understand that real-time game tweets reflect what's going on at the time. It changed. It was a game." And he replied, because tools like you take any opportunity you can to take a dig. But then it gets better. So I'm like, Jay, a tool? We've had a nice back and forth over the years. To which he added, we have. It doesn't mean I never thought you were a tool from the beginning. That was perfect. So I thought that was going to be it for me and mean tweets until, I made the mistake of going at Clay Travis on. I don't know if you guys saw this unfold in real time.
Oh no, I missed this one, Steve.
Screaming no at the top of your lungs. It was sort of like, wearing an "I'm with her" T-shirt at a Trump rally. I kind of should have expected it, but I tweeted at him because obviously Clay Travis, scumbag that he is, went after Greg Schiano and just, just an awful set of a mob of angry people at him when he when he was going to get the Tennessee job. Really turned that thing. It was an ugly situation against a guy the three of us know who, has his faults as a football coach, but certainly not as a human being. So as Tennessee was losing, I found myself aggressively rooting against them, and I'm like, why do I care about this game so much? And it dawned on me, I didn't care about Tennessee lost. I wanted Clay Travis to look like an idiot. So I tweeted at him about that, and he replied, Steve, I make millions of dollars a year, and you're an old bald man who lives in New Jersey. Don't blame you. I'd hate me too.
I will say this. So there's nothing I agree with on Clay Travis. I don't want to get into a political discussion, but I don't agree with him on anything that he that he believes in. That being said, that's a great line. That's a great clip.
That being said, you are an old bald man who lives in New Jersey that doesn't make seven figures. But guys, these are three things I've come to grips with at this stage of my life. That I'm bald, I live in New Jersey, and I'm not making $1 million a year. I've kind of had to come to accept that at this point in my life. But yeah,
my favorite part of this whole thing was then one of those, like, that Rutgers football Facebook page, somehow, like, your tweet or Clay Travis's tweet about you got on there, and then, like, people started ripping you, Steve. And someone, like, one of the things they said was, like, you're just a North Carolina boy who shouldn't be covering, like, Rutgers. And I almost responded, I guess you missed the big, heralded story about Steve's childhood in Nutley, North Carolina last week. That that I was all over the place. It's just, oh my God. I will say this though, I don't have a list of them, but man, we got a lot of tweets after we kind of pushed back against Rutgers' little media blackout last week.
That's true.
Not naming a quarterback. It amazes me. It absolutely amazes me how fans can be so frustrated with this team, so frustrated with the coach, and in the minute the media gets involved, it's like rally the troops, circle the wagons. Like it's just, if you feel the need to have an anti-media, jag before the first game.
I'll say this, just on the fan topic. Rutgers down 14-0, and there was calls for Chris Ash and Chancellor Greg Schiano. When
some of the true believers were calling for Chris Ash
at that point. And the reason why I bring this up is I was talking to a Rutgers official, I don't want to name who was so upset by it. And it just, look, you talk about like different points of view and whatever. And, the reason why I bring this up is fans are going to be fans and they're going to do what they want. But just, to add some color and levity to the whole situation, some inside information. Rutgers officials were really bothered by that reaction and again, fans are going to, they pay, for the most part, they pay money and, they have the right to be vocal. But, just so you know, fans out there who, if you're out there, it bothered Rutgers, officials that,
It should, though. It was the deserved reaction at 21-7. All about, the way the team
I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'm just saying that from the standpoint of, you were heard and it bothered, people inside Rutgers.
Yeah. It is sort of fascinating, but yeah, it's good. I mean, I think fans should have come out of that one. They hadn't had the opportunity to have that sort of spirited feel in a while. So, hey, we can take it on Twitter. We're professionals. All right. Questions from Rutgers Insider. We haven't mentioned it yet, but if to this point, I mean, I thought really the true power of the Rutgers Insider, NJ.com/text to sign up was really during the game, because it cut out all the Twitter nonsense. It was just, us interacting with people on there, giving facts and observations without any of the noise that you get on Twitter. So I hope if you're a subscriber, you enjoyed that. And if you're not, you'll give it a look-see. We've got a lot of discounts. What is the discount, Cratch? These things that are maybe half off the first month at this point?
I think, yes, podcast, the promo code, podcast, NJ.com/text. Join us.
All right, so here are the questions. The first one, and this is interesting, has come up a bunch, and I don't know if we've nailed it down, if you guys have nailed it down without me knowing. Was there a team vote for the quarterback position? This is kind of a weird thing. I've never heard of anything like that before, where a team would vote for a position. I mean, the coach makes $2 million for a reason. What do you guys know?
Zach Vineski. It was something that came up in Chris Ash's press conference after the game, where he kind of alluded to it. Yeah. I asked Vineski, and Vineski is a really colorful kid, good quote, but he did not answer point blank, and I did ask him. You could probably understand why. I think he's still friendly with Art, but the vibe I got was Chris Ash. It was his decision ultimately, but I think he did have input from the team.
Well, how does that work then? Again, they ask him privately. Certainly, got to take a vote in front of our.
The way it works in general is, if Chris Ash has relationships with the upperclassmen, the guys who are a part of the leadership, he would probably bring them in one-on-one, just ask for their 2 cents on the situation. Look, we talked about during training camp, especially late. There was a bounce in the step of the offense whenever McLane Carter would get into the game. It just seemed like they were more lively. And they just moved the ball. I mean, we saw it late in training camp, Cratch and I, and we talked about it here on this podcast. So, but whether it was from the actions or just from meeting with some players individually, I don't think there was a team vote, though, so to speak, in the Hale Center where that wouldn't be fair to Art.
All right, Cratch, this one for you. So you broke it down a little bit, but were there any freshmen who played better or worse than expected? First of all, how many played? That would be a good place to start. What do we have number-wise?
Yeah, so we had – let me just pull this up, actually. Pull up the project text and Rutgers Sports Insider messaging. We'll find it because I sent it out early during the game – after the game, excuse me. And obviously we'll do the Redshirt tracker as the season goes on, but it's always going to come first to the project text subscribers. All right, so K-Ron Adams, Aaron Young, 2 running backs played. Cornerback Donald Williams – linebacker Mohamed Toure, wide receiver Isaiah Washington, who got a lot of action. Tight end Cooper Heisey. Brian Ugwu, the linebacker from Hillside, also snuck in on special teams, I think, sometime in the first half. Of those players, I tend to think Aaron Young is definitely not going to redshirt. I still think K-Ron Adams will redshirt because obviously you got Blackshear, you have Pacheco, you have Aaron Young. You also have Elijah Barnwell, who played. Less sure about – I think Toure is going to play this year. I think he'll be a special teamer. Same with Washington. Williams, I think, is kind of a toss-up if whether he'll redshirt. And then Cooper Heisey, I think, is going to have to play given the lack of depth they have at tight end. So, but any freshman who did not play in the game, I would expect a redshirt. And as for how they all performed, I mean, no one really stood out. I mean, their opportunities were pretty limited as it is. I think Aaron Young showed a nice little burst on a run, but other than that, nothing really popped out.
Another good question. How can we prevent the long runs? Is it the line or linebackers missing assignments? It's a problem last year, Sarge. Problem again early in the first quarter. What is the deal?
Generally it's a lot of issues. Everyone will point to the defensive line. That's generally the undersized defensive line that is the target. But it is not to quote Chris Ash, but he would be the first one to tell you it's gap assignments and it's linebackers. And again, sometimes it's just getting beat off the ball. So there's a lot of issues. How do they prevent it? Cratch is right. I don't see them all of a sudden replacing guys. One thing that he brought up before Cratch brought up was the issue at Sam, and one interesting thing to note. And they moved Malik Dixon to strong safety, and he had a good game. Had that one big pop at strong safety. He looks like he's kind of cemented himself there. But if Tyreek Maddox-Williams, if he continues to struggle the way he did, at least in pass coverage, could they move Malik Dixon up a level, so to speak, moving back to Sam? That's where he was playing, a year ago at this time. That's something to keep an eye on. But I don't think they're all of a sudden going to make a trade for Alabama, defensive linemen. I don't think they're going to be able to do that at this point.
Right. All right. Another good one, and the answer really wasn't clear to me from watching the game. Are the receivers doing a better job getting separation? Bo Melton's the one I'm thinking of. We talked about the touchdown pass where he looked like it was just the only place the ball could have been thrown and a great catch. What are you seeing overall, Cratch? Do you think these guys are getting open?
Yes and no. From what I saw, I didn't see any, I will say this. There were a couple of guys who were wide open down the field. I don't know if it was separation, busted coverage. Rutgers just didn't get the ball to them for whatever reason. I thought Bo got a little bit more separation than everyone else. But I also think what I saw was I think there's a difference between how we define, are we talking about like physical separation where a guy's speed gets him past the coverage, and I think Rutgers did a better job of this than they did last year in this game. They seem to have more route concepts that were getting guys open based on the scheme. I think there was a couple times where, Mo Jabby kind of was wide open in the flat, because they kind of cut the route short a little bit and they dragged maybe the guy over the top the other way. I think that was something I saw more of, but straight physical, just outrunning your guy, didn't see a whole heck of a lot of that. If you talk about the play, that touchdown catch with Melton, he was pretty covered. I mean, the ball was just right in the perfect spot.
Yeah, it's funny. Sorry, maybe you can address this. The idea that I thought we were going to see a lot of more of the younger receivers. We're talking to camp about guys who were going to be, that we thought were physically better, who were going to get out in the field more. Yeah. It didn't really happen.
So one guy who I kind of hyped up a lot had his chances. It might have been McLane Carter's best throw of the night, believe it or not, where he threw in the back corner of the end zone to Davon Robinson, put him in a perfect spot. And if you look at the replay, Davon Robinson just dropped it. That's the type of play where, as someone inside the program told me, that's a play that Bo Melton would have dropped a year ago, and now he's catching it. So, again, I don't think that we're going to have to wait a year to see Davon Robinson emerge. The point is, he's getting separation, which you like. I think there's going to be some opportunities for a guy like him. Same thing with Isaiah Washington. I think that play, where it was the interception we kind of alluded to earlier, I think we might see them go back to the well. They're the feeling inside the program that Isaiah Washington could be a big play threat this season.
All right, let's go to predictions. And Sarge, I loved your question at the press conference today when you're trying to get Chris Ash to talk. Any sentimental thoughts about going back to Iowa? You were born there, raised there, your home state. No. It was just perfect.
I'll do one better.
Sentimentalist. I think we can know that at this point.
In Chicago at Big Ten Media Days, when things were kind of winding down, it was just me and Chris at his little table. I said, Chris, we're going to have to write about you going back to Iowa in a couple weeks. I said, as a joke, I'm like, do you have any great Iowa caucus story you can give me that I can write about or something? This is because I don't have any. And I'm like, Like, really? And then Chris goes, James, like, I've played road games.
Okay, so let's just okay, so
I love it.
Chris Ash grew up in Ottumwa, which is about an hour away from Iowa City. He did say that he was an Iowa fan growing up. I did some research. There was a Q&A with Steve Serby of the New York Post about a year and a half ago, in which he, in which he asked a few questions about his native Iowa. In that Q&A, Chris Ash talked about this hamburger place called Canteen. The quote was, "That was kind of a big deal to be able to go to get a canteen. It's a loose meat sandwich place. It was steamed, greasy, and very good." End quote. So I went to look it up, okay, guys, and if we want to make a road trip, it's only an hour away. It is home to a World Championship Canteen eating contest June 1st. So we missed that. Politi might be able to put it on his calendar for 2020. But it's loose meat. I know that's basically Politi's favorite thing. So, there might be something that we might want to do Friday night.
Here's the thing, Sarge. I have looked at this on Google Maps, MapQuest, Apple Maps, everything. Ottumwa might be 65 miles away as the crow flies from Cedar Rapids and Iowa City. It's a 2-hour drive. I don't know if there's construction on the interstate. It's a 2-hour drive. So as much as I'm sure that Steve loves loose meat sandwiches, I don't think we're going to drive 2 hours.
You have to take a stagecoach to get there for 2 hours?
Have you seen Politi drive? I mean, that's a trip for Politi. So.
Okay. Let's go right to predictions then, shall we? Another thing about the game that struck me as weird, the line is 20 points. Is that right? 20 points? That seems like a lot, doesn't it?
It is.
It is a lot, right?
Well, it's a lot because Iowa, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, they're not a team that really is going to be so far superior offensively, with athletes that they're just going to blow Rutgers away. I mean, we've seen this formula of like Washington, in those openers where they just were so far superior athletically, and they just had so many weapons. Ohio State comes to mind as well. Right. I don't really think that Iowa's going to just run Rutgers out the building.
Right, and that's kind of where I'm standing. I'll start with my prediction first. I kind of agree with that. I liked what I saw again, like we talked earlier in the podcast. I still think this will be a come to down to earth kind of game. I don't think they're going to get blown out, though. If I had to pick a score, I'm going to go with something like Iowa 26, Rutgers 10. So within that 20-point range. But still, another double-digit loss on the road. What do you got, Kretsch?
Similar score. I'm going to go 28-13 Iowa. I think it's going to be one of those games where throughout the game, at the end of the day, you look at the scoreboard, it doesn't look too bad, but in the span of the game, never once did you think Rutgers could seriously have a chance to win the game.
Right.
One of those games, it looks close, it looks okay, but Iowa dominates from start to finish.
Yeah, I'm gonna go close. I'm gonna go 21-17 Iowa. And I think Kratch is right. I think it's going to be like Northwestern a year ago. Northwestern won 18-15. It was close, but if you remember, Northwestern held the ball for the final 6 minutes, and they just completely wore Rutgers down, and they knelt the ball on the 5-yard line to end the game. So it was a little deceiving. I think McNulty's going to have enough weapons in the backfield where he can execute an efficient game plan. He's going to be able to control the tempo a little bit. I think Carter will settle down, maybe not throw as many picks, but ultimately, I can't see Rutgers winning this game.
It is interesting that we have Iowa all scoring in the 20s. So that would be certainly, I think, given the way the defense has performed at times last year, that would be a victory for the Scarlet Knights if they could hold them in the 20s. But it's hard to imagine Rutgers scoring enough points to win this game. But we'll be there. We'll be in Cedar Rapids. Iowa City. We're staying in Cedar Rapids, flying into Cedar Rapids. I'm sure that airport will be it'll be interesting to see connecting through Chicago. If you guys are out there in Cedar Rapids, hey, try to find us. We'll be at the most expensive steakhouse that I can find. Anything else? Anything else to add, guys?
No, we're good.
All right. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it. NJ.com/text, of course. And we'll be back next week to recap what happens in Iowa. Thanks.